Today's guest is Dennis Mikula Jr., chairman of Mikula Contracting, a third-generation excavation, demolition, and environmental services company based in New Jersey since 1946. At the onset of 2026, Dennis embarked on a new and exciting chapter in his leadership journey. From running just the New Jersey chapter, he now serves as the CEO of the Land Improvement Contractors of America, or LICA, a national trade association with a footprint across 25 states and more than 2,500 members. Here with me to talk leadership and passion around driving impact in so many ways, Dennis Mikula Jr. Welcome to the C-Suite.
Thanks for having me, Fred. Real excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And first, I do want to disclose that you are a longtime client and friend of Valley Bank, and we appreciate that. And our paths have been crossing for several years now, although you've banked with us for how many years?
3 generations.
3 generations.
Yeah, definitely 3
right.
generations.
3 generations, and Valley's going to be 100 years old next year. So your family's been part of our family for quite some time. Our paths crossed first probably 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was at a Meadowlands Chamber event that we're there. We're out networking. We're learning. We're listening, and we just got to know each other. And you started throwing out all these names of great people at the bank who you've known for so long. You're on the board of the Meadowlands Chamber?
I am, yes. I'm on Jim Kirkus's executive board, so it's been a great experience over there, and I'm happy we got to meet over there. And like I said, and a lot of members of your bank from Valley we've gotten to know, through the Meadowlands, plus everybody that we already knew in our existing relationship.
So Dennis, I know that you're on a lot of boards and chambers. Before we get into that, talk to me about your current role as CEO now of LICA, and what does LICA do, and what's the scale and scope of it?
That's great. Well, current role as CEO, for the national organization, we represent over 2,500 companies, nationwide right now. My job is to help our members with advocacy, education, safety, and workforce development. So it's been great getting to know a lot of companies very similar to ours throughout the country and help them really in their day-to-day business operations.
And where would you say, when you think about the footprint of the United States, where are the members located? Are there any concentrations?
Yeah, we have a huge concentration right here in New Jersey. We have a fair amount of contractor members here in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and all the way out through the Midwest. We have Indiana. We have Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska. So all the way from here all the way out there, it's a pretty good concentration of where our contractors. And the great thing is the diversity in what we do. Out here, it's a lot of infrastructure work. As you get towards the Midwest, it's a lot of tiling and drainage work. So the way we look at it, in our organization, if it touches the dirt, it's LICA. You're a LICA contractor. So,
and so you are officially the first contractor that we had on the show. Since we're based in New Jersey, how do we not talk to someone in the contracting business, right? With right. All that goes on in the Garden State, a lot of dirt being moved around, right? So we'll come back to LICA in a little bit, but talk to me around your upbringing, your company, third generation business. You're now the chairman. You're not as active in that, but talk about your career journey growing up in a family business.
That was great. I was very fortunate to get to learn a lot from my grandfather when he was still alive, and heard a lot of stories about him, hard work. We started our business, like you said, in 1946, so we just turned 80 years old. He started after World War II with a pickup truck and a hand shovel. That's how we started digging foundations, and it became into more of a land clearing excavation company that grew through the years and changed as the environment changed too. We went into more environmental work, and in the 80s and 90s started doing some cleanups and tank removals, and now we're a pretty diverse company, from anything with site improvements, environmental cleanups, demolitions. So that's kind of grown through the 80 years of our history.
And for you, what was your? You went to, where did you go to school?
I went to Montclair State.
Went to Montclair State. Did you know as you're in college that you were going to come back into the family business?
I had two passions. One of them was the family business.
Yeah.
Growing up, my sandbox growing up, and the kid was learning how to ride an excavator, bulldozers, and backhoes. Where most kids were playing with Tonka toys.
You had the real thing.
4 years old, I was learning how to operate an excavator. So I always had a passion for the family business. I always enjoyed working close with my family. And, another passion of mine I was a football coach for years, so I was kind of going back and forth. But to be around family, to build our business, to work alongside, my father for many years, my brother, uncles, was really a true passion of mine. But you're working together in a family environment, which is great. Everybody's there for the same cause, and you have your family name on it. So there's a lot of pride that goes with that.
So you graduate college, and the next step?
Next step after graduating college was, I kind of, worked alongside my father. I got to learn the business. My father, what I learned from him, was unbelievable. Like his relationships with people, and I think that's where I got my passion for connecting with people. And my father loved being out in the field. I kind of like behind the scenes in the office and developing systems and processes. So we worked really well together for many years. Once I graduated college, we were, again, technology was just getting into it. Emails were just getting in. I know that seems great, but like, I remember one of my first assignments, the professor wanted me to email it in. It had to take a second versus writing something. But we started to translate what I learned, into our business.
And then you were also somewhere around that time or afterward, you were a college coach, a football coach?
I was. Yeah, so in 2004, I had an opportunity. It was the only time I really stepped away from the family business for a year or so. I had an opportunity to be a full-time football coach at Hofstra University. And I remember having that conversation with my father. Said, Dad, I was a high school coach at the side. So I was working at the business and coaching high school. And I had an opportunity to be a full-time college coach. And I remember being a little nervous going to my father saying, hey, Dad, I have an opportunity here. And he basically said, oh, you're young, you're single, why wouldn't you do it? And that was the best thing I learned as far as father-son relationship.
The answer could have been much different.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. But
he
saw my passion, wanted to do it. And now it's great. I had 2.5 years. I was living out in Long Island, working at Hofstra. I still kept an eye, and we talked almost every day anyway. But what I realized was, after spending some great years out there, that I could have the best of both worlds. After I left college coaching, I wanted to be a family man. And I think I learned by watching my father, my grandfather, and just kind of wanted to be involved with the family business. And I was still able to come back, and I coached at some high school and local colleges after that. So the key was I wanted to be home, with my family at that point as we were starting. My wife and I were starting a family.
What do you think's the greatest leadership lesson you took away from being a college coach?
The greatest leadership is that you can't do it yourself, and I think I learned so many things from coaching football through the years. And I know we've heard this before, but it's not about the talent in the room, which is very important. It's about the talent in the room working together. And I think that has shaped me more than anything. Collaboration, working together. In football, you have three sides of the ball. You have offense, defense, and special teams, and they have to work together. And if you think about it, it's no different than a construction site, right? You have laborers, you have operators, you have drivers, and then you have the office, but they all have to be in sync to work together. So a lot of it relates. I take a lot of what I've learned on the athletic field and coaching and then worked it into my business life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up as a wrestler, and I feel that there was a lot of lessons from wrestling that I incorporate still into my every day as a leader, every day as a worker myself, every day as a parent. And then you combine that with, the athletics with what you're learning on the corporate side, but also for you, what you learned from your dad. So you're now getting shaping from, coaching a college sport, shaping from your father and the family business. What were the next steps that you took in the family business? Like, how did you amp up your leadership?
Well, I think what I started doing is I started attending some networking events, and one of the lessons I learned from my father was if somebody's willing to tell you about their past, how they got there, listen. And I started to go around, started to get involved in, some chambers, got involved in the Meadowlands, got involved, with commerce and industry and different things where.
And you're on that board too,
I'm on
right?
that, yeah, I'm on
CIANJ,
yep, I'm
with Tony
Russo. I'm on his executive board as well. And some of those connections. But the key lesson that I learned from my father is used to tell me that if somebody's willing to tell you their failures, their adversity, and how they work through it, really listen. Take out your notepad. And I think that's what you do when you're in these situations. When you're working in this family business, a lot of times, you're it's a little tunnel vision. This is how we've done it, generation to generation. Right. So what I started going out is meeting with other family business owners, other businesses inside and outside of our industry, just to kind of see how they were running things, what they were doing, how were they marketing, where were they looking at, financially, how are they financing things? And I think that helped me grow as a leader, the more questions I asked,
And then at some point you become vice president of the New Jersey chapter of LICA. And how long were you involved with New Jersey LICA?
So I was on their board for, we as a company, we've been involved for a while. I was on their executive board for 8 years, 6 as a vice president, the last 2 before I accepted the CEO position for 2 years as president of the board of directors. Okay,
so you're serving there. You're on the board of CIANJ. You're on the board of Meadowlands Chamber. You're also on the board of Bergen-Newbridge
Medical Foundation Board, yes.
Okay, and tell me about that.
So
how you got involved there.
So Deb Viscani, who's also on both boards.
Yeah.
And it's a foundation board that helps an amazing medical center in our area here. And I wanted to be on the board, great commerce and industry, Meadowlands, even LICA's board, a lot of industry related, right?
Yes.
The foundation board is something where a board I can give back.
For Bergen-Newbridge Medical.
For Bergen-Newbridge, again, it helps such a community that needs it. So being on a foundation board really and putting time and working with an amazing board and staff and an amazing CEO and Deb Visconi, I really think it's great to give back. So that's why I was very happy. I'm the vice chair of the foundation board, so I really enjoy my time with them.
And talk a little bit around the main mission of Bergen-Newbridge Medical.
It's helping a population that needs it. They don't turn away anybody. And that's where the foundation kicks in to help with whether it's a facility or help where people need your help.
And they're public hospital.
Yeah, the largest public hospital in New Jersey.
Okay,
most beds.
So you're creating impact. It sounds like you're giving of your time in addition to all of your regular job, right? Your full-time job
Right.
and your family, right? Yep. You have one daughter, correct?
I have one daughter, yep, just turned 13, so.
Okay, congrats.
Thank you.
Entering the teen years.
Yeah,
I have
know.
a teenage daughter.
I know, we've talked about that.
Yeah, I have 3 teenagers, right, at home.
Around.
So yeah, that's probably the hardest job you have is the parenting, right?
Yeah, it's the best.
Hardest and best.
Hardest and best, but and that I take that into consideration as well, because you mentioned, chairman of a family business, CEO of a national organization which requires travel. And you also look at the board commitments when you're on, especially when you're on the executive teams, you're meeting more frequently, but you have to schedule that time, for family, and we try to, and I believe, even with my travel and the schedule now on the national level, I'm there. If there's an event, I'm not missing it. Family comes first, and I learned that again from my father and my grandfather back in the day.
So, learning lessons from your family, from other leaders around you. Talk a little bit around your leadership style, and is I remember a story you telling me about your dad where one of his employees made a mistake. It kind of can you just share that with me again while we're chatting?
It's a great story. I'm happy to bring it up. Many years ago, I believe I was probably about my daughter's age. It was my teenage years, and just hired a new employee, and my father received a call that the employee backed with a very large dump truck back too close to the hole, and the truck backed in and fell into the hole. So they had to make a whole excavator, pull it out and everything. Things happened. Nobody was hurt. And I was young, so I didn't know how my father was going to handle a situation. So I'm back in his office, and I'm kind of peeking into the office, and I don't remember the employee came in, tears in his eyes, and said to my father, he's like, I really, apologize, and basically, here's my keys, and thank you for the opportunity. My father stopped. He goes, he asked two questions. He goes, are you hurt? He goes, no. He goes, I'm okay. He goes, did you do it on purpose? And the employee looked, and he goes, no. He goes, well, next time don't back too close to the hole. He goes, take these precautions, and I'll see you tomorrow. And that employee stayed on for the next 27 years. 27 years with the business until he, moved away. And it was such a lesson of humility, of how we all make mistakes. And not all mistakes, right, are intentional. And that taught me so much to give second opportunities. And, no one's trying. He didn't try to back it into the hole. It happens. He was probably nervous, new on the job. And I think I've used that in my leadership to allow vulnerability, allow people to take chances without worry that their job's going to be there the next day. So
yeah,
I learned a lot.
That speaks volumes, and thanks for sharing that story. It's an amazing story that speaks to an owner looking at the bigger picture of things, looking at the people, and realizing, and even in the corporate environment and landscape, people can make mistakes. They will make mistakes, and you have to also position them in areas where it's okay to make mistakes, and have them realize it's not going to make the company fall to pieces. So that's a great leadership lesson, because if not, people are never going to feel safe to take chances, to do more, to grow. And look, that employee became a 20-year great employee and retired with the business. So thanks for sharing that. Talk to me about the pathway now that created the opportunity for you to become the CEO of a national trade organization.
Wow. There's a lot that goes went into that decision making. I think impact was number one. And, being in our family business for a very long time, you can have an impact at a certain level running a local, successful long-term business. But I wanted something where I can make an impact on a greater level. Our industry is something, again, like I said, I've been in for since birth. And, we're at a crossroads right now. There's a lot of opportunity with workforce development, which we have an aging industry right now. So we have to invest money into our workforce, our apprenticeships that are coming up. We have businesses that are also aging out, where, you look, there's, how many family businesses make it to the third generation, how many make it to the fourth. So we want to have opportunities for these businesses to succeed. And I just felt that, looking back, of why this decision, it was where I could make the greatest impact, and it took a little while to get there. You mentioned, I have a younger daughter, as we're, with travel concerns and everything, but I was sat down with my wife, and we talked about it, and this was the right decision at the right time.
And so you were running the local chapter for LICA for a number of years, and then all of a sudden they came to you with the opportunity.
Last summer, so summer of 25, at the National Summer Convention, the CEO, there was an announcement that he was stepping down. And, honestly, at that point, I did not think that I would be the CEO come January 1st. I called a member of the national board, and I said, listen, anything you need to do, I'd love to help you, kind of help you find that next leader of the organization. He's like, would you be interested? I said, no, I'm running this. I'm on these boards.
So you first turned it down. I see.
I unofficial.
I hear so many stories like this. You
it's
first
true,
say
though.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So no thank you, but let me help. And then I talked to another executive board member, and we started talking. Very similar conversation. I'll never forget. It was a fall morning. I'm having coffee Saturday morning, and my wife Diana sits down and we started having a conversation. I said, I'm trying to help. I just wish they would, I'm not interested. And she goes, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. And she's like, well, why? And I didn't have a good answer right away. And she's like, well, you said, when the business got to 80 years, you were going to look for something different, a change, something. And I said, yeah. And, I didn't have a good answer for that. I said, what about the travel? She's like, you've always made it work. She's like, you're on the board, you're running the businesses. You never miss one of Lucy's events. I'm sure you'll make it work. And called the chairman of the board on Monday. I said, you know what? I'm going to throw my hat in on this one.
So that's amazing. The first lesson of all is that we should listen to our wives because
100%.
Their instincts
Yeah.
are always spot on.
Always.
And that's first and foremost. When you have the support at the core of your family unit and your partner, it's something that should not be ignored. And I do mean that, right? But second, I'm thinking about what you did for the prior 8 years, being on the board of New Jersey LICA, helping, giving, and we talk about this concept a lot on the show of a slow build. And so I'm sure you didn't know at the time, as you're creating this slow build, helping, doing the right things, building a relationship with all of the members of LICA throughout the country, going to events. And all of a sudden you have this opportunity to be the CEO. So how did that work help you as you came into this role in January?
That's a great question. LICA was the first board that I was on. And what I got to experience was a lot of passionate men and women contractors working together for something that was greater than their own businesses. And that was my first exposure to a board because, again, when you're running a business, whether you're president, vice president, you're thinking about your business. When you're on the board of an organization, you're thinking about you're thinking about your industry. You're thinking about impact. You're not thinking about how is this going to affect your business. You're thinking, how's it going to affect and I really enjoyed that, the collaboration, the connections. And then when we traveled, again, being on the New Jersey board, we got to travel either to a winter or summer convention. You got to see that same work in other states, other boards with other executive directors. And that really excited me to see how people across the country were working to make the industry better. So that's what the passion is for the CEO role, is how can I now collaborate with all these great leaders throughout the country and do what's giving our industry a great opportunity to have such an impact on our 2,500 plus member companies.
And now you come into the role of CEO, and you're already a known entity. You've already built relationships with the members throughout the country. So I imagine that's made it a bit easier. Tell me about some impact that you're quickly making. You're 6 months in.
Just about. Just about.
Yeah.
6
What are you
months
working
on? Just actually finished a lot. We were in lock. So. Yeah, the number one impact thing that I did was, and the board asked, when I first took the job, what's your first, 30, 60, 90? I said, I'm going on a listening tour. And the first thing I did was, my first month of January, I scheduled one-on-ones with every executive director. It's everybody that runs our state chapters. And just listen, listen to what was going on in their state, listen to what was going on with their membership, where was it trending, what type of events were they running, what was their relationship with the national organization. And after that, what we did was we really came up with we took about 12 different issues, concerns that was going on throughout the country. We had a national convention in March, and we got together and said, okay, we worked in groups. I said, all right, let's get 3. We're going to focus on 3 over the next 90 days. And whether it was brand and marketing, whether it was, our benefits or retention of our members, we came up with a game plan. And with the benefits, we've been very fortunate, to answer your question. Over the last few months, we were able to work out a partnership with Caterpillar where our members can get thousands of dollars off of a new purchase, 0% financing, and we've run some focus groups with them. So it's been a great partnership. We've also have a deal for our members with GM Fleet right now, so very similar, where they can get thousands of dollars off purchase for their corporate trucks and their fleet that they need, which most of our members have multiple pickup trucks and fleet vehicles and everything, and extended warranties. So the early wins.
So in less than 6 months, I'm sorry to cut you off, but in less than 6 months, what you're telling me is on day one, you went out and engaged and listened, and you met with everyone, and you started building a platform of trust and advocacy with your members, and that's so similar to things that I hear from other leaders out in market and leaders that come on this show. They talk about the value of listening, being the last ones to speak, not being the smartest people in the room, and it sounds like that was like day one. That's the first thing you did. You went on that tour, and then now you're creating deals with Caterpillar, creating deals with GM. So real tangible benefits for members that you can point out to say, here's what we're doing, and now this is in place.
Yeah, and I think, to go back to the listening, I think if I were to come in day one and say, okay, here is my plan, that's only sustainable as long as I am there. But if we work together to develop our plan for the organization, it'll be sustainable long after, I've moved on from the role, which I'm not looking to, but that's we want to build things together. And when you listen to the members and they talk about the benefits, that their contractor members need in the States, when you get behind a Caterpillar, GM, and many more that we have already, and a lot that are coming, I think it shows we're all in it together. It's not just here's the orders from the CEO. Here's because of that's. Now we're doing this together. We're going to work together to build this organization.
Yeah, you're building something great. It sounds like. So, how else would you measure success? What does success look like to you if we go out, a year or two from now?
Success to me is very simple. When you're dealing with the National Trade Organization, It's that every member, all 2,500 plus contractor members, partners, feel that they're getting value. Now, value might be something different. Value might be that they were able to use one of those benefits I mentioned. Value might be that they're able to participate in an apprenticeship program like the one we have here in New Jersey. Value might be education or safety that they receive. It's different to everybody, right? We have different size companies. We have, different size. We have difference of the diversity of their work. So it's value to me. If they're receiving value from the organization, then it's well worth it.
Well, and that means that they'll stay. Right.
They will stay, and that takes care of your retention, right there.
And then and if you can retain, then you can also grow.
Right.
Right, and so that's. I imagine you want to grow the organization as well.
I do, and I think every great leader wants to grow. But what I talk to our leadership about is I want to, we're land improvement contractors, so we want to have a stable ground to build on. So the first thing we want to make sure is that our members, our current members, you can grow from 2,500 to 5,000. But are the 2,500 contractor members right now being served? Are they getting value? If they're getting value, then it's easy. If they don't, then you can grow and you're not retaining. So we want to make sure we are giving the value to our current members that are there, and then before we go into growth mode.
Great. Simple concepts. Sounds like you're already doing a great job there. For you as a leader, what do you do to develop your own performance, right? For you, and you have to be performing at high levels. Yeah. You have to be focused. You have to be able to pivot. You're pivoting from a lot of different things,
right?
And I understand that and relate to it.
Yep.
What do you do for your own performance and your own wellness?
For my own performance, a very good friend of mine who you know as well, Jamie Elizondo. We actually started. We were coached college football together for a few years back at Hofstra. He's my personal coach, and he's somebody that I think as a leader, you are, the one thing you have to know is you're never in it alone, and you have to, find people, not only when you're struggling, but when you're looking for different answers, looking for clarity. And I think having a personal coach, whether it's business coach, growth coach, is very important. They get you to see things that sometimes you don't see. Kind of the role of the CEO, right? Is inspiring your staff to see things in themselves that they don't see. So that's something that I've done, for the past few years now.
So you're investing in your own leadership development and your own performance. Yeah. You attend other networking events throughout the year?
I do. I try to go to 1 to 2 outside of the area events. I've been to the World Business Forum. It comes in every year in New York City. I've been attending that the last few years. I've been attending events by John Gordon. I'm in his circle. And you're just meeting with great. We had a Zoom call the other day with John Maxwell. And again, you're just listening to these leaders who are worldwide national leaders, and you're listening and you're learning and you're seeing how you can relate these things. Because like you said, you're investing in yourself, right? So but you're not only, you're not investing in yourself. You're actually investing for everybody that you're having an impact on. So I'm looking at investment. If I can learn something and bring it back to my team, whichever team that is, whether it's a board, the family business, a lot of teams, but you could always learn something to help out. And that's what I enjoy. So I can't wait when I come out of these conferences, whether we go grab, a dinner and we're talking about something with Jamie or people that are, good friends of mine that are on these boards. How do we use this idea and work together? Again, whether it's with the business or on the board.
It's truly energizing. And before we end, I just want to ask you, what's your final advice for young people starting a career or people in the mid-level of their career and they want to get to that next level and achieve success?
Great question. And what I tell everybody, Fred, is meet people. If somebody is in a position where you aspire to be, ask them, grab a coffee, grab a lunch with them, ask questions. A lot of leaders are willing to share that with you. I think that is something that has really helped me. Any major decision I make in any one of these aspects, I'm calling somebody and I'm getting together with somebody who I've met along the way. I said, hey, let's talk about this. I have a question for you. How would you handle this? What do you think about this? Does this make sense? And it's a lot of questions without you're trying to form your own opinion of it, but you're asking people who's been in that position before. And the second thing is it's okay to be vulnerable as a leader. Number two, so it's okay. Because a lot of times when you're having these meetings, you don't want to show the vulnerability that you don't know something, but I think it's great. Hey, Fred, listen, can you help me out with something here? What do you think about this? Should I be looking at it this way? And I think just having that vulnerability allows for great relationships and amazing conversations.
So be vulnerable, authentic,
right?
Honest, and build a network of great people and surround yourself with people that you aspire to be like. And I'm happy that I'm in your circle and I've crossed paths with you. So I really appreciate you being on the show and appreciate your leadership.
Thank you for the friendship and everything, Fred.
Thank
appreciate
you, Dennis.
it. Thanks.
Thanks.